In movies such as Watcher and Mind Cage, and TV series such as Netflix's Mindhunter, fictional serial killers who butcher scores of victims have become objects of popular fascination. But unfortunately, serial murder isn't just something concocted by the imaginations of screenwriters and producers for our entertainment. It happens in real life. These are the world's most notorious serial killers, cases that span continents and decades. These aren't just stories of horror, but stark reminders of the darkness that can hide behind ordinary faces. Our first stop takes us to the heart of South America, Colombia, in the 1990s. A vibrant country, full of life, but also grappling with deep social issues and economic disparities. This was a time of significant change and, unfortunately, also a breeding ground for unimaginable darkness. It was here, amidst the bustling cities and sprawling landscapes, that Luis Alfredo Garavito, a name synonymous with terror, emerged. He became known as La Bestia, or the Beast, a moniker that barely scratches the surface of the horrors he inflicted. Garavito specifically preyed on the most vulnerable members of society, young, impoverished boys, often from rural areas where poverty and lack of opportunity made them easy targets. These were children with little protection and even less hope. To gain their trust, Garavito employed a series of calculated disguises. He would often pose as a monk, exploiting the inherent respect for religious figures in the community, or as a charity worker, offering a glimmer of hope to those in desperate need. With a carefully crafted facade, he lured these innocent children with false promises of food, shelter, or the prospect of honest work, preying on their naivete and desperation. He presented himself as a savior, a beacon of light in their bleak existence. But these promises were nothing more than a cruel deception, a path leading only to unimaginable suffering and ultimately to their deaths in the remote and unforgiving Colombian wilderness. After years of evading justice, Garavito was finally apprehended and, in a chilling confession, admitted to the murders of 147 young boys. The details he provided were gruesome and disturbing, painting a picture of unimaginable depravity. However, authorities, after extensive investigations and the discovery of numerous mass graves, believe the true number of his victims exceeds 300, making him one of the most prolific serial killers in recorded history. In a move that sparked outrage and disbelief, Garavito was initially sentenced to just 22 years in prison, a sentence that seemed woefully inadequate considering the magnitude of his crimes. This lenient sentence was a result of legal loopholes within the Colombian justice system, and, surprisingly, his cooperation with the police in identifying the bodies of his victims. The mere possibility of his eventual release from prison continues to haunt the nation, raising profound questions about justice and accountability. It stands as a chilling reminder of how the legal system can sometimes fail to deliver true justice, leaving victims and their families with a deep sense of betrayal. The shadow of Garavito's unspeakable crimes continues to loom large over Colombia, a constant reminder of the darkness that can lurk within humanity. The sheer scale of his evil is almost beyond human comprehension, a stain on the nation's history that will never be forgotten. Next, we meet Pedro Alonso Lopez, the monster of the Andes, whose killing spree spanned Peru, Colombia, and Ecuador in the 1970s. Lopez targeted young girls, moving from village to village, leaving devastation in his wake. He confessed to over 350 murders, leading police to mass graves. Despite his crimes, Lopez served only 16 years in Ecuador, was released, and then vanished. His whereabouts remain unknown. He could be anywhere. Lopez's story is a terrifying example of a predator slipping through the cracks. The Andes still whisper his legend. Sometimes monsters simply disappear. Lahore, Pakistan, a city steeped in history and culture, is also a place where unimaginable horrors have unfolded. The year was 1999 when the name Javadikbal became synonymous with unspeakable evil. His crimes weren't just shocking. They reverberated across the globe, leaving an indelible stain on the collective conscience. What drove a man to commit such atrocities? The answer, according to Iqbal himself, was revenge, a twisted desire to punish a society he felt had wronged him. His weapon of choice was the most vulnerable among them. 100 homeless boys lured to his apartment with false promises of shelter and care. Little did they know, they were walking into a death trap. Once inside, their lives were brutally cut short. Iqbal strangled each of his victims, silencing their cries forever. But the horror didn't end there. To dispose of the evidence, he dissolved their bodies in vats of acid, erasing their existence in the most gruesome way imaginable. What made this case even more disturbing was Iqbal's meticulous record-keeping. He documented every murder, every act of depravity, as if chronicling his descent into madness. In a final act of chilling audacity, Iqbal penned a detailed confession, a letter sent directly to the police outlining his heinous crimes. He didn't just confess to the authorities, he made sure the world knew, sharing his story with the press, ensuring his name would forever be etched in infamy. The subsequent trial became a media circus, a spectacle that captivated and horrified the nation. Every detail of Iqbal's crimes was dissected and debated in the public sphere. The court, in its judgment, sought to deliver a punishment as cruel and unusual as the crimes themselves. He was sentenced to die in the same manner as his victims, dissolved in acid. However, justice in this case remained elusive. Before the sentence could be carried out, Javadikbal was found dead in his prison cell, leaving many to wonder if he had cheated the system one last time. The case exposed deep flaws within the Pakistani justice system, highlighting the vulnerabilities of the homeless and the marginalized. The acid bath killer's reign of terror left a nation reeling, grappling with the darkness that lurked beneath the surface of society. Javadikbal's legacy is not just one of horror, but also of unanswered questions and a chilling reminder of the capacity for evil that exists within humanity. His confession, a detailed account of his monstrous acts, remains one of the most disturbing and unsettling documents in the annals of criminal history. The story of Javadikbal serves as a grim reminder that sometimes the truth can be far more disturbing and terrifying than the darkest works of fiction. In the seemingly tranquil towns of the UK, a sinister figure lurked, hidden in plain sight. Dr. Harold Shipman, a trusted family doctor, the kind of man people confided in and relied upon for their health and well-being. But beneath the veneer of respectability, Shipman became one of history's most prolific serial killers, a wolf in sheep's clothing. His actions would forever stain the reputation of the medical community. For over 20 years, Shipman systematically murdered his elderly patients, preying on their vulnerability and the trust they placed in him. He was seen as a pillar of the community, a caregiver, but in reality, he was a cold-blooded killer. His weapon of choice was a lethal dose of diamorphine, a powerful painkiller administered in a way that masked his true intentions. To conceal his heinous crimes, Shipman meticulously forged records to cover his tracks, altering medical histories and death certificates to avoid suspicion. He manipulated the system, exploiting the very processes designed to protect patients. Suspicion arose only after he forged a will to inherit from a patient, a brazen act that ultimately led to his downfall. This act of greed proved to be his undoing, raising red flags that could no longer be ignored. This blatant forgery triggered a full investigation, uncovering a trail of deceit and death that shocked the nation. Detectives meticulously pieced together the evidence, revealing the horrifying scale of Shipman's crimes. Shipman was eventually convicted of 15 murders, a number that barely scratched the surface of his true body count. The courtroom was filled with grief and anger as the families of the victims sought justice for their loved ones. But inquiries revealed he likely killed over 200, making him one of the most prolific serial killers in recorded history. The sheer scale of his crimes was staggering, leaving investigators and the public in disbelief. He never confessed, taking his motives to the grave, leaving behind a legacy of unanswered questions and profound sorrow. Shipman chose to end his own life, hanging himself in his prison cell, denying his victims and their families the closure they deserved. Shipman's case shattered trust in the medical profession, leaving a deep scar on the relationship between doctors and patients. Sometimes, evil hides behind a caring smile, a stark reminder that appearances can be deceiving. The Angel of Mercy, as he was chillingly known, was anything but merciful, leaving behind a trail of devastation and a legacy of betrayal. In Siberia, Russia, Mikail Popkov, a police officer by day, became the werewolf by night. Using his badge, he offered rides to women, then drove them to remote areas to kill. Popkov claimed he was cleansing the city, but his crimes were pure sadism. For years, he investigated his own murders, evading capture until DNA evidence finally exposed him. Convicted of 78 murders, Popkov is Russia's most prolific serial killer. His double life stunned a nation. The werewolf now sits behind bars, but his legacy of terror endures. Sometimes the hunter is the one sworn to protect. In rural China, Yang Xinhai, the monster killer, terrorized 4 provinces from 1999 to 2003. He broke into homes at night, murdering entire families with farm tools, often for little more than a meal. Yang's brutality and mobility made him a phantom, evading police for years. Villages lived in fear, sleeping in shifts until a routine police stop led to his arrest. He confessed to 67 murders and was executed in 2004. Yang's reign of terror left scars across China's countryside. Sometimes, evil moves silently in the night. The monster killer's shadow still lingers. In the former Soviet Union, Andrei Chikatilo, the butcher of Rostov, murdered children and young women from 1978 to 1990. He lured victims near train stations, committing acts of torture and cannibalism. Soviet bureaucracy and forensic errors allowed him to evade capture for years. Chikatilo confessed to 56 murders and was executed in 1994. His case exposed the dangers of denial and incompetence in law enforcement. The butcher's crimes haunt Russia's history. Sometimes the truth is buried by those meant to uncover it. In Washington state, Gary Ridgway, the Green River Killer, preyed on vulnerable women for nearly 2 decades. He targeted sex workers and runaways, counting on society's indifference. Ridgway eluded capture for years, even after being questioned by police. Advances in DNA profiling finally led to his arrest in 2001. He confessed to 48 murders, though the true number may be higher. Ridgway's lack of remorse was chilling. He is serving life without parole. His reign of terror finally ended. The Green River still holds secrets. In Brazil, Pedro Rodrigues Filho, Killer Petey, blurred the line between vigilante and monster. He began killing as a teenager, targeting criminals, drug dealers, and even his own father. In prison, he continued his spree, claiming dozens of lives behind bars. Despite being sentenced to over 400 years, he was released after 34 due to Brazilian law. Petey became a minor celebrity, but was killed in 2023. His story is a twisted tale of revenge and notoriety. Sometimes the avenger becomes the villain. Justice is never simple. In Ukraine, Anatoly Onoprienko, the Beast, murdered entire families in the 1990s, claiming a voice compelled him. His rampage left 52 dead, spreading terror across the countryside. Onoprienko moved quickly, leaving few clues, and evaded capture for months. He was finally arrested after a tip from his cousin, confessing calmly to his crimes. Sentenced to death, he died in prison in 2013. Onoprienko's brutality shocked a nation. Sometimes evil arrives without warning. The Beast's legacy is one of fear and devastation. In Austria, Jack Unterweger fooled the world as a reformed killer-turned-celebrity writer. Paroled after 15 years, he became a media darling, even reporting on murders he was secretly committing. Unterweger killed at least 9 more women, using the same method as before. When police closed in, he fled but was captured and convicted. The night of his sentencing, he hanged himself in his cell, tying the knot as he had on his victims. Unterweger's story is a cautionary tale about deception and misplaced trust. Sometimes the mask never truly comes off. We've reached the end of our journey through history's darkest corners. These stories remind us that evil can hide behind the most ordinary faces. The victims deserve to be remembered as more than statistics. Stay aware, trust your instincts, and look out for one another. The world is beautiful, but shadows exist. Be vigilant. If you found this video compelling, like and subscribe for more true crime deep dives. Until next time, stay curious but cautious.